crafted a pre-med program, and I didn't realize, but now today I do, that I was using the tools that Trinity had given me to set my sights as high as I could and to really shoot for the moon. There's a fabulous saying. Do you all know it? If you shoot for the moon and you miss, where do you land? Yes! Love it. So I ended up at Stanford, where I had a fabulous experience and continue to be in communication with them. So I invite you, think about what gifts you're being given here at Trinity. You don't need to know them now, but commit yourself to exploring them, to understanding that you're safe to be the best you that could possibly be. You know, when I got invited, I realized there couldn't be a coincidence that so many unique things were happening in the world the year I got invited to do this. There's the Me Too movement, and Time's Up, and the horrific, horrific shootings that called forth the brilliance in young people just like you. And I knew there was a message that I had to bring you, but Muriel already did, which is the whole planet, the whole earth is groaning, yearning for something new, a new way of doing things. And if you talk to leaders, especially in spiritual communities around the globe, it's the voice of the feminine. We've tried the masculine, right? The war and the power and the control. And now we're being called forth to be collaborative, to figure out a new way to love each other, to take care of each other, and to take care of the planet. My message to you is, that's in your DNA. That's who women are. That's who we're brought to the planet to be. And I really encourage you to explore that. You know, when people talk about if something's wrong in society and people say, well, why don't they fix that? Why don't they make that different? Who's the they? You? Us? Why do we wait for other people? The tragedies in the high school shootings showed us that the voices of the future, I guess Muriel's right, it's the voices of today, are going to lead us where we need to be on this planet. So, several things were happening, one of which was a trip to Stanford that my beloved husband and I took back. I met him when I was at Stanford. And we went back to visit, and two things happened at Stanford that I want to share with you. One of which is we met probably the leading researcher in leadership and in women's positions. She's a women's advocate. She happened to teach Bob law. He's a lawyer when he was in law school there. But we went to her lecture on leadership, and she said the single greatest predictor of successful leaders, whether men, women, non-binary, is a very feminine trait, the feminine trait, which is emotional intelligence. The ability to collaborate, to create a safe place where all thoughts are welcomed. In fact, there's a new term I learned, radical collaboration, which means you go out of your way to get people who look different, think different, worship differently, have different problem-solving approach, and you put them in a room and you honor everything that they have to bring. Sounds like Trinity to me. The second thing that happened that was astonishing to me is at Stanford this year, this leading place, this cutting edge place that leaders are born and create and solve problems for the world, opens an institute on failure. Isn't that wild? Why do you think they did that? Because they recognize that the best leaders know how to fail, know how to take chances, and turn around and say, what happened? What can I learn from that? And I want to tell you about some of my failures. Well, I could take the rest of the afternoon and tell you about some of my failures. But the ones that I want to tell you about are the ones that propelled me forward. When I was a resident, you know, it might be Sister Arlene's fault if I go over, because she taught me to give speeches. I have no idea how much time I have. Does anybody know? 5? We can keep going. Okay. Failures. So you've heard that I'm an expert in violence against women. In my wildest dreams in medical school, I never thought that would happen. What happened to me is when I went to Cook County Hospital as a first-year resident, I was getting all of these women with somatic complaints, meaning bodily complaints, headaches, chest pain, pelvic pain, anxiety, and I would work them up and do the $1 million workup, throw test after test at them, and I could not figure out what was going on, and I certainly was not helping them. And finally, bit by bit, I began to ask questions about what was going on in the home. Is someone hurting you? And what unraveled whole societal disease of violence against women. And I did what any learner does. I went to my attendings who knew more than I did, and I said, what do we do about this? What can I read? Where's there some literature? Astonishingly, they dismissed it and told me I was a feminist and I was overblowing this stuff, and really they were just depressed women and I needed to treat their anxiety. It didn't sit right. So I went to a leading social worker, and he, brace yourself, told me, Marian, what you're looking at is something called Marianismo. This is what women do because they want to recreate the path of Mary, and by suffering they feel better about themselves. Yes, thank you for laughing. So here I was, and I thought, I don't know. But this person was learned, he was seasoned, he was smarter than I was, and I went back. Suffice it to say, another year goes by, and I said, basta, this is it. These women are suffering. I'm a healer. I need to know what to do. So the quote that I want to give you is from Sojourners, which I don't know if you read. It's our favorite social justice magazine. But Bill Wallace says, in response to the young people who brilliantly stood up and were courageous and trusted their heart, what happened to me is I trusted my heart. He says, and he's speaking to you, trust your hearts and your questions, and let them take you to new places and new roles. Because I trusted my heart and the questions I was asking my attendings and my supervisors, a new role was born in me. And now I get to go, I have the privilege of going around the country still and helping doctors grapple with this. When 25, 30 years ago, I was told that this was anxiety, and it was all in my head more than theirs. The other failure I want to talk about is a group of us, when I was very young, new in medicine, were very, very fervent about universal health insurance and access to care for everybody. And we had put on a panel, and I was astounded that the leader in medicine and universal health care at that time, Quentin Young, if anybody's ever heard of him, he's now dead, but he actually showed up. He took my invitation and showed up. And there was a panel, and I thought it was going really well. We were talking to people of different views and different sides. And there were many physicians, many people from universities and colleges. And afterwards, a professor at Loyola came up to me when I was surrounded by my peers and my colleagues, and remember, I'm pretty young now. And he said, what idiot put this together? It's okay, I've heard worse. Seriously, so I was utterly humiliated. I thought I was not going to recover in the moment. I'm sure my lip was quivering. I'm a big crybaby most of the time. And I held it together, and behind me was someone from the Illinois Academy of Family Physicians who I didn't know was watching the whole time, but I felt utterly humiliated in front of my peers. And yet I felt passionate about universal health insurance. So I kind of skulked away and thought, what was that about? And really didn't show up on the scene in organized medicine for a few years. And finally, the drive in me brought me to the Illinois Academy of Family Physicians, which is organized medicine of family docs in Illinois. And the person who was standing behind me remembered what I withstood and actually asked me to be on the committee. Long story short, I got very, very involved in the Illinois Academy, and my passion kept showing up at meetings and committees, and at a very young age, I was asked to be chair of the board of the Illinois Academy of Family Physicians. And this catapulted me into politics, which I'm not very good at because I can't keep my mouth shut on most occasions, but it put me in line to understand different people's perspectives and how to work with different people, how to collaborate, that very female quality. So I want to remind you, please learn how to fail. Please learn that if you're humiliated, if you're told that you're wrong, you're just going to pick yourself up and do it again. Remember these stories. This is part of what Stanford is studying. Trinity is your laboratory, the way the Institute at Stanford is, to study failure and success. This is your laboratory. Figure out what you can do. Don't be afraid of failing. These teachers will support you, hopefully. Yes, teachers? There you go. Someone clap? Yeah, here you go. I want to end with another quality that leaders have, which is they surround themselves with other people who call the best in them. I cannot possibly have done the work I do and the work I hope to do if I didn't have a posse of brilliant, loving, kind, nurturing people who tolerated the things that are not great in me and call forth the things that are. I want you to practice doing that. I want to tell you a story. One of the most exciting experiences I had in leadership was the American Medical Women's Association recognized that there was a discrepancy in screening for cervical cancer and breast cancer across the country, and this was in the early 90s. Long story short, they put together a master faculty, and I was invited to come and help people teachers how to go back into different places around the country. And I was young, and I had triplet young boys, believe it or not. Yeah, that's a leadership experience. And we all were constrained on time, and it was supposed to be 2 weekends where we would come together, and most of us were young and had families and said, we couldn't do this, could we just do it in a weekend? So we gathered, and we had this fabulous vision and this fabulous goal, which was to decrease the number of women who die in this country from undiagnosed breast cancer and cervical cancer. So time was a pressure. And every time we got together, women from all different walks of life, all different races, colors, different practices of medicine came together in this hotel, and the room was crackling with energy. There was so many ideas. We didn't have time to make ourselves small and say, that's not my talent. I remember just divvying up things and people saying, well, you know, who's good at the internet? Not me, I can't do that. Okay, who's good at graphics? Someone else. Who's good at lecturing? Me. Who's good? And we divided this up and we did this fabulous work. And it ended up that the US military invited the American Medical Women's Association to go around to every single one of their military bases and teach, because the military was one of the places that women were not getting enough attention. Fabulous. And what I want to tell you is, in that room, not once, not for a second, not for a millisecond, did any of us women talk about our fat thighs, our flat chests, our big noses, or whatever it is that burdens women. Why am I telling you this? Because as a physician, I am telling you girls, the amount of energy society makes us spend thinking about how we look and what people think of us is a real drain. It's toxic. Muriel talked about the work of the divine. You cannot do the work of the divine if you berate the very body she gave you to do that work. So enough. For Lent, I would suggest, I'd invite you to just start practicing being kind to yourself. You know, in psychology fields, there's a fabulous saying that, you know, what voice in your head gets the microphone? Isn't that great? Is the voice in your head the one that you always hear that says you're not good enough, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're not going to succeed, you can't, you shouldn't? Those are not the voices of the divine. The voices of the divine call us to our best selves. And that's what I want you to practice. I'm going to end with a quote that hopefully you've heard. Unfortunately, too many times it gets ascribed to Nelson Mandela, who actually used it in one of his speeches, but it's from Marianne Williamson. And it says this. We asked, and by the way, I took the liberty of editing it, and you'll see where. We asked ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. We are all meant to shine, just as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us, and do the same as we are liberated from, I've got trouble here with my writing. Oh, this doctor stuff. Thank you. I need the electronic records. So it's supposed to, the line is that we do the same as we're liberated from our fear, we liberate other people. And this is not just in some of us Trinity girls. This is in every Trinity girl. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do that themselves. So my wish for you is that you practice letting the divine shine. The world is hungry for what you have to offer, and we are anxiously waiting for your gifts. Thank you.